Hey, how's it going guys? My name is Zealwood and today we're taking a look at Monster Hunter Rise, a brand new game just released on Nintendo Switch, and to answer the ultimate question, as always, is it worth your time? So, Monster Hunter Rise is a single/multiplayer, third-person action RPG. Set on a primitive, monster-infested world, you take on the role of a recently appointed hunter, charged with preventing an assortment of calamitous events. You'll be taking on an army of unique monsters, mastering an arsenal of impressive weaponry, all while utilizing the brand new Wirebug tool introduced with Rise. So aesthetically, for a Switch title, the visuals are extremely impressive. Capcom has created Rise using their RE engine software, a direct successor to the engine used for Monster Hunter World, while obviously taking into consideration the performance limitations of the Nintendo console, resulting in a very high visual standard at a generally stable 30 FPS in both handheld and docked modes. Colours used are generally bright yet quite pale throughout to maintain that realistic, crude look to the terrain as often as possible, giving the illusion of almost real-life areas injected into this game world, especially when combined with the environmental effects. Speaking of lighting, these effects can be both quite subtle and very obvious. You've got the gentle sunlight/moonlight effects to give textures a slight sheen, shadow effects for that realistic touch to both area and monster detail, but all other effects like weapon glows, critical strikes, KO damage, and the many different monster attacks and explosions are very in your face and stand out extremely well compared to the realistic terrain designs. Not to mention the light, spark, and flash effects you get from certain terrain, tools used, and types of damage dealt. Textures and detail also seem to be complemented very well by the game's lighting, very good use of gloss effects, matte finishes, and various textures give unmistakable detail to many different surfaces, armor materials, and monster designs. I especially like the incredibly realistic scale, hide, and fur texture quality, and how they interact with the new elemental blights that monsters can be afflicted with. Very good job. The UI is just as good as Worlds, very similar in terms of layouts and information displayed, except with a couple of changes to coincide with the new gameplay features brought to Rise. The grayed out health bar indicator and the on-screen text size while in docked mode are a bit annoying however, and take up a pointless amount of room on screen, which did affect my peripheral vision in the first few hours, but luckily you do get used to it. Other screens like inventory, vendors, item box, and more are all pretty much a copy and paste from World, so just as easy to navigate as before. If this is your first Monster Hunter game, they may seem daunting at the start, but don't worry, you'll get used to them pretty quickly. Level layouts are just as large as before since Capcom has decided to stay with the no loading screen style of exploration, except with far less ground clutter to make sure they don't overpower the capabilities of the Switch console. I'm not gonna lie, I definitely underestimated the performance power of the Switch when it comes to character and enemy designs, but I have to say, very high quality. Think of PS4 standard monsters, hunters, and equipment detail combined with simpler, less dense environments. This is basically Monster Hunter Rise. Brilliantly accurate hunter movements, very powerful monster attacks combined with their high visual standard make for a consistently immersive visual experience, especially for a handheld console. The OSTs in Rise are brilliant. Finally, some good fucking remixes of returning monster themes that actually capture the heart and soul of the classic tracks, with the addition of new, powerful touch-ups and occasional vocals to really enhance their intensity. Something that Monster Hunter World definitely struggled with. Each track is bold, in your face, and incredibly distinct, often overpowering pretty much all other sounds of the game, just like the old Monster Hunter titles. I love it. Other soundtracks specific to Rise for the new monsters and areas are also very good and have clearly been composed by developers that respect the original titles and know what they're doing. I honestly cannot wait to hear other returning monster tracks like Deviljho and Chameleos once they're potentially released in future updates. Everything else sound related is just as high quality and memorable as it's always been over the many years of Monster Hunter. With Rise specifically, however, they've added considerably more voice acting to the game unlike any other title I've seen. Your hunter character as well as teammates during online play are very talkative both in and out of combat. There are various lines for taking damage, sharpening weapons, and even during opponent monster animations like during incoming powerful attacks to help alert the players. A very welcomed feature for new hunters. Overall, a more than successful soundtrack quality that brings back that simplistic intensity Monster Hunter is known for. Now for the gameplay. So firstly, Monster Hunter Rise doesn't have any difficulty options to choose from before you play. It is what it is whether you like it or not, just like every good game should be. The lore of the game is extremely simple. As mentioned, you take on the role of a recently appointed hunter. Your local town has discovered signs of an incoming calamity, otherwise known as the Rampage. A mysterious event that occurs once every 50 years where hordes of large monsters attack the village in a frenzied rage. Being the town's designated hunter, it's your job to combat the rampage, find the source of its influence, and remove it. As I said, extremely simple. For those curious, you'll still be accepting your traditional guild quests as with previous titles. Rampages are simply additional content. When you first start the game, you're brought straight to a character creation screen. This allows you to make very detailed alterations to the look of your character. These include face shapes, hairstyles, and eye color. If you're really going for a specific look, you can easily spend over an hour choosing the perfect character for you. You also get to customize your Palamute and Palico, dog and cat-like creatures that'll help you out in various ways during hunts. Once done, you're shown a short intro cutscene of your character dreaming about a scary drawing, wake up to your two trusty companions, listen to Fugan laugh like an Edda for a few seconds, take control of your character, and play. The first 20 minutes of the game have a lot of dialogue and training box pop-ups to explain basic character controls, what vendors are for, and how to embark on hunt. If you're new to the series, I'd recommend reading as much as possible because you likely miss something important. Combat related information is also in the form of advice pop-ups, but the game does highly recommend a few optional training areas to get to grips with the controls before you start taking on monsters. Speaking of controls, on the surface they're pretty straightforward, but the more advanced weapon, mounted, and bug techniques will take some time to perfect and pull off seamlessly. But to go through some of the basics, you've got your general movement controls as you would expect, with the addition of dodging, sprinting, using items, various wire bug commands, and the various attack commands. Sounds simple enough, but trust me, the controls are far too complicated for me to even scratch the surface in a review. Dodging, if timed correctly, can be used to avoid enemy attacks. Sprinting is to obviously run faster at the cost of stamina. There are well over 30 possible items to use, all with various effects, but the wire bug and weapon commands are the main reason people will purchase Rise. The wire bug is a brand new feature, is simply a small insect that is used on a short cooldown to travel through the air, recover from attacks, and to mount monsters with. It can be used in many different ways, all of which you'll want to practice regularly to use both efficiently and comfortably. Weapons, however, are even more complicated since the game has a whopping 14 possible weapon types to choose from, all with their own basic attacks, advanced techniques, and varying difficulty. Hammers are used for knocking out monsters and come with good mobility. Longswords are for precision counterattacks and high damage, while bows are more for long-ranged attackers that like to keep the enemy at a distance. All of these weapons have their own pros and cons depending on the target monster, but most of the time you'll just be sticking to your personal favourites anyway. I could honestly talk for hours on the various combos, techniques, and benefits of each weapon in detail, but unfortunately my reviews are long enough as it is. If you're curious, however, definitely look up an in-depth weapon guide video on your favourites. The very base concept of the game is to simply prepare your inventory, equipment, and weapons, take on a hunt either alone or online with others, kill or capture the monster using your various tools, items, and techniques, collect items from that monster in the form of scales, shells, and fur, use these items to make new weapons and armor out of that monster, rinse and repeat. There are way more mechanics involved in that process, but that is the extremely simplified version of Monster Hunter gameplay. Other mechanics include collecting perma buffer birds during hunts to increase increase your stats until the hunt is over. Endemic life to provide temporary buffs to use on command. You can mine, you can fish, you can collect bugs, you can forage various herbs and seeds, you can mount your palamute at any time for faster travel times, locate campsites in various areas and fast travel to each, eat meals for various buffs before a hunt, you can use tools like traps and bombs to assist you on hunts, 2 or more monsters can fight each other during a turf war, you've got the rampage missions where you hold down an area with turrets and traps to endure hordes of monsters that want to break down the town's walls, low and high rank versions of monsters for a greater challenge as you progress the game, you can change weapon skills to further customize your style of play, you can make your own guild card to send to other players, you can make detailed changes to the map and how objects are displayed, and much more. Most of these features are pretty much carryovers from previous Monster Hunter titles, but are loved by the community nonetheless. Combat in Monster Hunter is the main reason I've spent so many hours over the years playing games of the series, and that's because it's simple, challenging, and addictive. Each monster, especially on high rank, provides a good challenge, punishes you for being greedy with your hits, and teaches you the art of perfect dodges, counterattacks, and blocking. There are plenty of new and returning monsters of the series that provide unique challenges, interesting threats, and often annoying behaviours, even more so if it's a monster you're not familiar with. But when you really start to get in the swing of things, you'll find there are monsters you love and monsters you hate. So remember, provided you take the time to really master at least one weapon of choice, perfect your wirebug techniques, and heal like it's G rank, the challenge provided by Monster Hunter Rise shouldn't be too much of a problem. So for the ultimate question, is it worth your time? Due to its impressive combat improvements, more accessible endgame, and introduction of the wirebug, not to mention its impressive visuals and soundtrack remixes, Rise is a more than welcomed addition to the beloved Monster Hunter series. I'm going to give this game a 5-star or 92 out of 100. The location of facilities in the online hub are probably the most conveniently located services compared to all previous Monster Hunter titles. The 30 FPS gameplay cap is definitely noticeable, but luckily doesn't really hinder your overall gaming experience. I love the new sound effect you hear when weapon sharpness degrades to a lower colour. I like how endgame is far more accessible now, since you can simply exchange monster parts for random skill charms to make the perfect endgame sets. I obviously can't show you the monster, but I have to say I love this game's final boss fight. Very unique and very fun. I'd love to see more of it. On the other hand, however, I hate how max potions don't actually work, since the game expects you to collect the permabuff birds in order to increase your max HP. Due to the very high cost of making armor and upgrading weapons compared to the cash you get from successful hunts, for practically all my item purchases I had to sell quite a few things just to be able to afford upgrading my hunter, which was a touch annoying. I didn't like how they haven't included the rare carve and gathering animations from World, a very small detail I'd expect to see in all future Monster Hunter releases. The hunter is clearly on a diet now, since your pre-hunt diet contains only 3 little puff balls instead of the mountain of foods you'd eat in previous titles. Due to the very overpowered recover ability of the wirebug, anyone that can hold ZL and press B during their recovery frames can easily reduce this game's overall difficulty by at least a third. And finally, I'm still waiting for my boy Giganox to appear. It seems like they bring everyone else back, even Kezu, but not my slimline, strange-looking friend. A very big shame. Other than that, Capcom has also confirmed plenty of additional content to be introduced over time, maybe even the release of G-Rank hunts. My fingers are crossed. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more games I'll be reviewing in future. I had to smash this game super fast to get this review out on time, so make sure you leave a comment and let me know what you thought of it. Better yet, check out my Monster Hunter World video and see how far the channel has come. You may be very surprised. But as always, all the best guys, take care.
It's been 50 years since the last calamity, but I remember like it was yesterday.